call this meeting to order and begin with any board-related announcements. Any announcements? How about any ABC staff announcements? Call this meeting to order and that was weird.
Yeah, sorry, that was the live stream. We do not have any announcements at this time, Dr. Blakey.
Great. And do we have a quorum?
Not yet, but we will, I think, very soon.
Okay, so we'll move forward. I just wanted to let everybody know that before we go to the approval of agenda and minutes, we'll come back to those when we have a quorum. We are proposing a change to the agenda to move the voting items and new business to the end of the agenda because of some of the business items that would be part of the voting that you need the information for first. But since we don't have a quorum, I don't believe we can make that motion yet. And we will move to the community school essentials supportive infrastructure in hopes that we get a quorum during the presentation.
Dr. Blakey, thank you so much. I see that Rodney has joined us, and so we do have a quorum now if you would like to call for that as soon as he's able to rejoin as a panelist.
Great, okay. So what we're asking for is an approval of the agenda and moving the, sorry, I'm trying to, my computer isn't all on one page. Moving the new business and voting items to before board member and community announcements. So if we could get a motion to amend the agenda.
So moved.
And is there a second? Great, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Barbara. Was that Barbara?
Or no, that is Josie, Josefina.
It was both of us.
Okay, I thought I saw both of you. And you'll see the December minutes in the agenda. Do we have approval of the December minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion by Dean Goodrich and a second by Ms. Peterson. Is anybody opposed? Okay. So now we would like to move to our community school essentials, looking at supportive infrastructure. And I believe that Deanna is going to help walk us through this.
Yes, I am happy to walk us through this. Thank you so much. I just wanted to pick up from where we left off in December, which I know feels like it was a very long time ago. But we were able at that time to share with you all some examples from community schools about how they have moved through this theory of action. And it occurred to me that we might not have actually shared this theory of action with all of you. And so I thought we might just show it quickly and explain that this comes from the Community Schools Forward, which was that big think tank across the nation that created this document along with lots of other supporting documents about 2 years ago. And as you can see, it's a continuous quality improvement cycle. And this is what we ask the community schools to do. For you all as the board and for us as community school staff, we sit in that bottom part that's not part of the cycle. It's a little confusing in the graphic, but it's basically supporting the cycle. So that's the supportive infrastructure. So when we talk about the supportive infrastructure in our board meetings, this is what we mean. And I thought it just might be nice to show this visual to you and to just mention that the ABC board members, really are integral, right, in creating the enabling conditions for schools to transform and move through this transformative cycle. You'll notice at the top, it does say theory of action for community school transformation, which is what community schools are tasked with doing. And that is transforming the way that the educational experience happens in their school. Are there any questions or comments on that before we move forward? Does that help clarify sort of where you are, like what you're doing here? Why are we here today? Okay. So this is kind of a close-up of part of the theory of action. This is actually the very first step that we ask schools to take. It is called Take Stock and Plan. And this is where a lot of the work that we talked about in December with the Community School Council and how they convene stakeholders, this is where it happens. So we ask them, as you can see at the very top, it's convene, bring people together, start talking. And while you're convening, you're going to take a look at, you're going to create a shared vision for your community school. You're going to create some goals. We ask the schools to align their goals to the APS goals and guardrails and to the 90-day plan. And then we ask schools to together collaboratively in this convened group, while they're convening, what they're doing is building trust, right? And they're opening up decision-making to stakeholders like students and like parents and family members and staff and community members who do have a stake in what is happening here in this school setting. And so one of the really important things that we ask them to do is identify some patterns in data. We ask them to look at school level data, community level data, and often that includes things like attendance rates, chronic absenteeism is part of that. It might look at culture of belonging. They might look at family engagement. So in December, we shared with you a few examples of what schools had been focusing on as far as data, who they had engaged as stakeholders, and then what were some of the early outcomes that they were seeing. So on this step, we don't see outcomes yet. We ask them to convene, create the shared vision and goals, do some assessment, data analysis, and then create a plan. And so today I thought what we wanted to dig deeper into is this root cause piece, because as ABC staff, what we do is we take a look at what the schools are seeing from a systemic level. So a school is looking at just their own data, but what we see is across all 60 community schools in APS and the schools that are charter schools that are community schools that we support, we get to see kind of those trends at a macro level. And we wanted to talk about that a little bit today, but I wanted to kind of explain to you where this was coming from. And it is bubbling up from schools and what we are seeing in this process. Any thoughts or questions on that before we move on? Okay, great. So this next one is, this is a quote. Barbara, does someone want to say something? Okay, sorry. It is hard to see in this format. I know it's not my favorite way to share screens and things like that. So please jump in. Don't hesitate. This quote does come from a study that was done on community schools in New Mexico. That was published about 2 years ago. It was conducted by Jeannie Oakes, and they identified poverty, right, as a trigger. Poverty triggers this constellation of conditions that negatively impact children's school success and well-being. And I have highlighted in red here housing and homelessness, because that is the trend that we are starting to see really bubble to the top across school level, community level data. I don't know if you all saw just a few days ago, there was a national article published showing that homelessness has increased in New Mexico by 20%, which is very, very high. And so this obviously has an impact on our students and our families that we are trying to bring into this transformational process as community schools. So systemic issues like poverty really create these challenges for academic performance, right? For attendance, overall student well-being is impacted by this. And so we feel that addressing housing stability is something that this board might want to take a look at, and something that we might see as a cornerstone for helping to achieve not only educational attainment, but also educational equity. It's very difficult, I think, for students to learn when they're moving from school to school, or if they're not sure where they're going to sleep that night, or if they're in a shelter and it's disruptive. So this is just some data that, and I have linked, and I can send the slide deck to you if you want to dig into the resources that were behind this quote. Were there any thoughts on this?
Good morning, everybody. Counselor Rogers here. I'm excited to see this. Poverty is something I've talked about a lot, especially generational poverty, which is something that I think families in our systems are dealing with. It's generational. It's not like there's no safety net for the family and a loved one and a grandma. As far as like monetary, I can go to you because I need help paying my rent before I end up homeless. So I'm just excited to see a focus on this. Some of the things that I think could help with poverty alleviation that we're working on in the city are guaranteed basic income pilots, so that families get the extra hand up that they need. There's already some guaranteed basic income pilots happening with the Assistance League that is actually partnering with certain schools in APS where they're actually giving kids the guaranteed basic income. It's helping their attendance rates. And that's already happening right now in the city of Albuquerque with APS. So I think that's something maybe we can tap into and do more of, because they have really great outcomes with the Assistance League's guaranteed basic income pilot that they're doing right now.
Can I jump in there?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell if you could see or hear me. So I think on that point, one of the things that we've been working on, we passed a motion in our union a couple years ago to support the idea of repealing New Mexico's prohibition on rent control. Rents skyrocket. They are out of control. And in our motion, one of the things that we mentioned is that stable housing impacts student learning, and there's a lot of research on it. Low income kids in affordable housing score better on developmental tests, and low income kids who switch schools frequently due to housing instability and homelessness obviously don't score as well. And this is something that keeps coming up in our legislature. There's going to be a bill again this year that is going to ask that we repeal this prohibition on rent control and start doing something to help our families with stable housing. So if you all could pay attention to this bill, it will be in the legislative session. And it would be really helpful if people understood how this impacted our families and our kids in terms of their ability to do well in school.
Agreed. I think I want to say something that might be controversial, and well, it is controversial. When we look at, I didn't realize that as elected officials, you have to fill out financial disclosures, right, of where your income comes from. I didn't know this till I had to do one myself. And so I started looking at all of them for different elected officials, like our legislature, to see how many of them are landlords. This is why rent control is hard. They're not going to vote to, and I'm going to push for it. I'm going to push for it. They're not going to limit their own profits. And that is what we need to pay attention to when we're electing people, when we're look at those financial disclosures and see, are they going to vote to say, I, as a landlord, want to cap my rents? And that is a problem. And that's something I'm going to continue to be vocal about, because that I want rent control, but we can't do it here in the city because of that state law. And I think that is something we need to be mindful of and start talking about out in the open. And because that's a big factor.
On that point, Councilor Rogers, there is a rally that's being held by the People's Housing Project this Saturday at 11 at the Albuquerque Liberation Center right there on San Pedro. I'll be speaking. Maybe you could show up if you have the day free. I'll send you information. What they're saying is since 2017, rent has increased 70% in New Mexico. And so it's really something that we need to pay attention to because it impacts everything else that we are trying to focus on.
It does. And it's interesting that when I met with the Assistance League about their pilot that they're doing within a couple of schools at APS for guaranteed basic income, they cited the students, to ask them, what did you spend your money on? I helped with rent. It was a lot of them. I helped with food.
Yeah.
I like that broke my heart. Like the kid, like the and so we already have legislation at the city of Albuquerque to use our cannabis tax dollars. Is something I worked on a lot in equity and inclusion. And I know our director is working, I think, with United Way to get that money out because we already have legislation. It's already in the books to work on getting guaranteed basic income to families, in addition to rent control, to make sure that people can have what they need to thrive, not just survive. So I'm excited about that because it's already happening. I know that they're going to focus on youth in third grade. Rodney may want to talk a little bit more about it, but it's exciting stuff. We already have it in the legislation. We already have the money. We just need to do it.
Danette.
Thank you. I would also, and I love this conversation. I mean, that is this level of discussion and information to share across organizations is just the beauty of ABC. And also I would like to add, looking at the legislation that's coming in around the anti-donation clause. When we're talking about utilizing public dollars to support individuals, ultimately, right? We have some loopholes around housing, or loopholes, probably a bad word, sorry. We have some ways to do it through around the housing issue, but also poverty issues. But I think one thing we don't have is broad understanding from our local governments of those things. When it comes to student stipends, we have a huge push on pathways to go from, to really, especially into the trades and getting pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship. There are there are limited ways that we can pay students to participate, right? Because our students who need it the most are the ones you're talking about right now that need to have the opportunity to participate in an educational experience, often outside of the school day, so that they can move forward and get to wherever they want to go in their lives. But they have to choose between McDonald's and an apprenticeship program that could lead them to a career, because we can't necessarily pay them easily. There are ways to do it, but I feel like what I'm learning in the last month is that a lot of people don't understand those ways. So the roadblocks come up immediately, particularly with government. So part of that anti-donation work and also just the education of our own institutions would be super helpful, particularly for those of you that are elected officials, to just help folks understand and advocate. Because when we're talking about creating equity, that means we got to remove barriers, because that still leaves the same kids getting the same opportunities, and the kids who most need them don't get them when they have to make those choices. So thank you. I just wanted to throw that in while we're talking about looking at what's happening in the legislation.
For those of you that are interested, I put the information about the rally on Saturday in the chat, just so that you have it. Sorry, Rodney, go.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I just wanted to jump in too. This is a subject and a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And actually, organizationally, we've been partnering with an institute, the Seymour Institute, which funds United Ways and other organizations across the nation to really focus on housing instability, with the whole premise around that initiative of keeping people in their homes, families, students, families with school-age students primarily, because we all know that it costs more to rehouse someone once they've lost housing too, right? That's another point to make. And so when, Deanna shared this, I got really excited, because we are right now internally as an organization having conversations related to how can we scale up some of the work we've been doing. We've been a partner with the Seymour Institute on this housing instability issue for the last 10 years. And we have a couple of partners that we've worked with. We're going to be actually looking at a new partner in the near future that focuses on the legal advocacy related to tenants and landlords and things like that. So that's going to help support that. But we are having conversations about how we can scale up this work. And so this could definitely be an opportunity for United Way to partner even at a deeper level with ABC around some of the thoughts and ideas you have related to how to address this issue in a significant way. So I just say that to say that it's an endorsement from United Way, and certainly we are committed to be a partner with you all in this effort.
Wow, thank you all so much. I have a few other data points to share if you're interested in seeing this. This is the most exciting conversation. I am like so moved by your passion here today. So Chloe, if you could restart our slides. I just have a couple other things I want to share, and then I have a proposal for you all to talk about. So these data come from the Legislative Finance Committee. And what this is showing is a correlation between frequent moves and student performance on PARC. So the data are old, but as far as I am aware, there hasn't been a change to the point of the legislative conversation in policy, law, administrative actions that would change this trend. I don't believe anything has been enacted that would interrupt this. And so if we were to look at similar data statewide today, I think it would look the same or potentially even worse. And so as you all have already eloquently said, just evidence, and this is just a tiny bit, and there's a lot more out there, as Dr. Bernstein mentioned, that shows that housing insecurity disrupts learning. And that students who experience housing instability are more likely to drop out, to have lower test scores, and to face chronic absenteeism. And so the next slide is also some data from that I find quite interesting from the Marshall Project. The Marshall Project interviewed 2,400 people who were incarcerated and asked them, what interventions would have made a difference that could have kept you out of being incarcerated? And as you can see, the top 5 things are really clustered very, very closely, right? And number 1 and number 2, access to mental health counseling and access to affordable housing. And I would say access to affordable housing includes housing stability, being able to stay in the housing that you already have. And I feel like these data give a lot of, I feel like we want to give a lot of credit to the officials and to this board for the strong push that we've seen over the last few years toward access to mental health counseling and toward affordable housing. What we are talking about today really kind of digs into those other pieces of finishing high school, accessing healthcare, to Danette's point about going to college and a minimum wage job and better education. These are things that community school strategy can really impact directly. And I didn't know if somebody had a comment about this. I thought I saw someone come off mute. No?
I don't think so.
Okay, so just the things that we've been talking about, like the guaranteed basic income, right? Like keeping people housed because it's more affordable, like access to legal counsel when you are in court that Rodney referred to. These are protective factors, right? That ultimately, right, we do not want to see APS students and families in positions of incarceration. And so if there's an opportunity for us to disrupt the trends that we see in these data, and I believe that this also aligns very well with the APS goals and guardrails around completing high school and proficiency and creating a culture of belonging, safety, and care. And then I also wanted to just let you all know of some information of some things that we are doing currently. We have some really great partnership happening with so Bernalillo County is funding, partially funding the Family Stabilization Project as part of the McKinney-Vento program, which really helps stabilize families coming out of homelessness and keep them out of homelessness. And it's similar to, Rodney, what you were talking about with the SEMER project, except I believe that the SEMER funding, families need to be currently housed. In this case, it's a similar support, but it's for families that are moving out of homelessness and into stable housing. And so these are some data. There have been 66 families assisted so far this year, 11 unaccompanied youth. And those are intensive case management that the McKinney-Vento team does, and they do a really great job with that. That being said, as of December 13th last year, there were 2,352 students identified as homeless in APS, which is a really significant number of students. ABC also has a partnership with the UNM College of Population Health, and we help their seniors as they're working on their capstone projects to find projects that they can do in the community, working closely with community schools. And this year we have 2 capstone students that are working with Crystal Wilson, who's the director of APS McKinney-Vento, to assist families who are housing unstable. So before they enter homelessness, how can we prevent that? How can we help them get access to basic income? How can we help them pay rent? Those preventative services are not covered by the McKinney-Vento Act. The McKinney-Vento Act is limited to only helping families who are currently homeless. And so it's outside the scope, technically, of the APS Act, of the McKinney-Vento Act to assist families who might be entering homelessness. And so the next slide is really the most exciting thing for me. The federal United States Interagency Council on Homelessness released this new framework in September. And this framework is specifically designed for interagency, system cross-sector, like we are on this board, systems to prevent homelessness. So this is really a tiered approach to helping students and families. Well, from the perspective of the government, it's for everybody, but for us, it's for students and families right now, to really look at how do we ignite and initiate some preventative programs and services to help students stay in the housing that they're already in. That I think would be the priority, to help people move quickly out of homelessness. So McKinney-Vento currently really, their staff really sit in the very bottom blue level. That's where that is. We feel like community school coordinators, community schools, family liaisons, other school staff can really help with diversion, intervention, and prevention, and then universal supports. And so we're really excited to dig into this framework and talk more about what proactive strategies we can design that are thoughtful and intentional. The work that we're doing right now with McKinney-Vento and some of these other pilot projects like Councillor Rogers mentioned, they're happening because there's a need and we're being responsive, but they're not intentional and they're not designed and they're not necessarily sustainable because we haven't thought through how do we create a framework and a structure that can support these efforts. And this framework really does help to create that. So that being said, the proposal on the next slide is the creation of a centralized location where any student or family in APS can receive access or referrals to services that promote housing stability. This would be an intentional effort, a collaborative cross-sector approach to really streamline these resources for students and families, both who are at risk of homelessness, who are experiencing housing instability, and those who are already in crisis. And so before we move on to the discussion, actually, if you don't mind, Dr. Salazar from APS is here to share with us a little bit more alignment to the APS goals and guardrails.
Good morning, everybody. What we've done is this year we have added filters into our Panorama platform, specifically for student homelessness as well as students in foster care. And as you can see, elementary and secondary, there is an opportunity in the Panorama platform to look at group comparisons. And when we look at group comparisons, we're able to identify in a little bit more detail the intentionality of the efforts that we're doing in APS and where we need to look at and support students more specifically. So if we look at this particular graphic, elementary, which is 3rd through 5th graders, we have the skills, habits, and mindsets along with sense of belonging at the top, which is the overall percentages as a district. But then when you look below that, there's a no and a yes. The no is the baseline, you would say, of all the kiddos that took the survey. And the yes are the kiddos in our synergy system that report that are McKinney-Vento. And as you can see, there is a discrepancy, a big discrepancy that we are noticing with our students that are experiencing homelessness. So we have put a lot of efforts in working with, we're going to be meeting with the McKinney-Vento team in a couple of weeks to really do a root cause analysis as to what may be some of the root cause issues of some of the things that we're seeing with this data, as well as developing some strategies and next steps for this spring, and also looking into the future on how we could support our kiddos. And with elementary, one of the things, even though it's not part of our specific goal 4, but sense of belonging is something that we can really look at and see. That's a -8% compared to the 67%. And then when you look at secondary 6 through 12, it's pretty much the same. We're seeing those large percentage gaps of kiddos that are not demonstrating the skills, habits, and mindsets. And so how do we really work with our schools to be more intentional with our students who are experiencing homelessness?
Chloe, is there another slide after this?
I think so, yes. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I guess not.
Okay,
But
great.
so there we did the same thing, and it's very similar data with students in foster care. It shows that there is negative aspects all across the board with students that are experiencing homelessness and students in foster care, and we're really looking at how do we align some of the efforts with these very vulnerable student populations. And so we're really looking at being more strategic and intentional now that we have these filters that we're able to see in Panorama for this year, so we can be able to really support these kiddos more intentionally. Thanks, Deanna.
Thank you. So Dr. Blakey, I wondered if you wanted to lead this discussion and voting item as the board chair.
Okay, so the next part after, is there any more discussion on what Deanna has kind of talked about?
Or any questions about this idea for the Family Housing Resource Center?
I do have a couple of comments. One is I just want to give Deanna credit and props for being really, really dogged in this issue. It is her passion, and it's been at least since 2016 that she's been trying to get something to happen here with all of these things. And, you know, timing is everything. So good for you, Deanna. But also, just on a aside, because a lot of the folks, or at least organizations that also are representative of the ABC board, are working with the 100% community and that initiative. And there is a part of that initiative that's 100% called 100% Family Center, which is a little bit broader in focus that we just haven't really pursued because Albuquerque, Bernalillo County is so big. And United Way has also been working on something over time for a similar sort of resource center, centralized location that people can really get what they need. So I think I like the idea that this sort of brings all of these other things that we've all been working on sort of outside of the community school specific strategy. And also just want to recognize that what you've presented here today really, really is a great reminder that the community school strategy is about transformation, which means it's sustained and it is changing the way we are doing things forever. And it's not, while wraparound services and things are important to the success of folks in crisis, that if we don't change the systems and the way that we deal with those systems, we will never move forward and really have an opportunity to change our communities for the better. And this is a reminder that community schools are at the core of that. They are the center of every community, a school doing something. And I just love that there's a reminder, because a lot of times when I'm in meetings in other issues, they're talking about how many shoes we got, how many, what food pantries are open. And again, not that those aren't important things for people, but I love that this board has the opportunity to really look at a more systemic, those system-wide partnerships, those system-wide efforts, because I think that leverages all of our internal investments outside of this work in particular, all come together in this. So thank you for the work that you, and I know Crystal and Brian and Kenny and others have put into thinking this through.
Thank you, Danette.
I just wanted to say this focus on housing and homelessness is also a priority for the city. As you probably all know, the city has created a new department just focused on housing, homelessness, and health. And so it really aligns with that priority. And I'd love to bring in my colleague, Gil Ramirez. He's the director there, to see how the city can support and align this work.
Thank you, Kata.
I think there's something, I just want to bring some awareness to the issue of our immigrant community and the way in which their stability in our schools and in our community is currently being threatened. And I think this is an intersectional issue that we need to pay some attention to also.
Thank you, Ellen. And part of when we were, Josefina.
On that topic, this rally is at 11, and at 12:30, the West Side Democrats are holding a forum at the West, I just had it, the West Side or Community Center. It's on Glen Rio, I believe. And I've been invited to speak, and I was talking to Superintendent Blakey last night, gathering information to present. But to address this intersectionality between housing and community schools and immigrants, I think we're going to need the city and other entities to help protect. But it'd be great to have you all at the West Side Community Center on Glen Rio to show support. And that's it.
Thank you, Crystal.
Hi, this is Crystal Wilson. I am the director of the Albuquerque Public Schools McKinney-Vento program and have been attending. I wanted to address the question around our newcomer population, and I want to expand that a little bit as well to our students and families who are here without documentation. McKinney-Vento is a federal assistance act, and we are able to support our newcomer community, our refugee asylum seeking community, and our students and their families who are without documentation. Regardless of their status as a school, we don't have to ask about those types of situations. However, we do tend to sometimes infer or know what is going on. However, it doesn't matter. McKinney-Vento is focused on the service no matter what the status is, because our focus is around the housing status for our students. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that McKinney-Vento did have that breadth and scope. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Anyone else? So Barbara.
So this may be for another part of the agenda or another time, but I know 4 years ago, the community school coordinators played a really major role in getting information to undocumented families, setting up relationships in the community for helping watch for kids and make it safer for them. And so I'm just sort of wondering if that's getting put back in gear for families and information, everything from custodial guardianship, paperwork to other stuff like that.
I'm not sure on the ABC side or the community school side, and I don't think Brian is on anymore. I do know that from the district, we are putting together packets for principals and to make sure that we reinstated a policy that we have a board policy that ICE isn't allowed on school campuses, because that's actually not a law necessarily. So after more review, it's more local. So we made sure that we reinstated that. So we're trying to get information and we're working on all of that. Kata probably remembers back when she was with APS putting together a lot of that information. And so we are working on that through our chief of equity and putting together so that we can make sure that the parents and the families have the right information.
Mhm.
And
Sometimes,
I can. Oh, go ahead, Barbara.
just real quickly, sometimes the coordinators in the council will have different relationships with parents than the principals do. So I hope that there's some conversation between ABC and the the coordinators with the principals, because I think if they're working together and getting that information out, it may reach people that would be missed otherwise. But I really appreciate that, Superintendent.
We're really actually, thank you, Barbara. We're trying to, we had a meeting yesterday. We're trying to make sure that our partners in the community have the information of what they can tell parents is the safety part of being at the school. And it's not, I mean, we're walking to school versus being on a school bus, because we know that the families will listen to the community partners, you know, before they gain the trust of what they might hear from the school. And so we're trying to make sure that the information of what we can and can't do is put out in the community, and we'll work with the community school coordinators too to make sure that they get all of that information.
And that's what I was going to say. We did start that conversation with the community school coordinators in December at our huddle. And we also participated. We have broad systemic partnerships, just like what Dr. Blakey is referring to, right? And so we've already engaged members of the legal community. Community schools do offer, to your point, Barbara, a place of trust. They do tend to have different relationships with both community partners and parents, families, and teachers. And they have venues like Homework Diner and places where partners can come and speak directly to families who might have concerns. And so I think that this is an effort that we've already tried to get in front of. And I'm really happy to hear about that renewal of the policy. Thank you for sharing that. And also to our point of why we need a centralized, systematized approach to some of these issues, right? Like we're talking about today.
There's a question in the chat from Josefina.
It's in my chat. Okay. Our question is, receiving federal help McKinney-Vento, does that negatively impact undocumented workers' application for citizenship? I'm not sure. Crystal is still, Crystal.
Yes, I'm still on.
Do you know the answer to that?
I do. I'm happy to answer that question. McKinney-Vento, we receive federal support as a local education agency that's routed through the state and other grants. It is not considered the social service. I believe what you're indicating is on the application for citizenship, there is a question that indicates that an individual could be disqualified from eligibility for citizenship. So should they accept or falsify taking social services that they were not eligible for prior to citizenship. We have confirmed with our APS legal team that McKinney-Vento is not considered one of those social services. We have also worked with New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, the Refugee Newcomer Supports Program, and other community partners through the Community of Asylum Partners to make sure that this community is aware that they are eligible for public education across the board, and that includes McKinney-Vento.
Thank you. Mr. Otero, I see you on. Did you want to add something? Let's see if he comes on. Okay, so what we were hoping to do is to take a vote of the board, and based on the discussion of what we've been talking about to support the ABC and APS staff team, along with our community partners, including students and families with lived experience, in moving forward with creating a plan, including funding for a family housing resource center pilot project. That is the request for the vote, and we would like to throw that out there for a motion and any discussion.
So moved.
Thank you, Ellen.
Before we ask, just a clarifying question real quick. When, Deanna, when you guys are talking about a plan including funding, are you talking about just the plan that says how much funding we would need to get it off the ground? Or are you asking for us to locate funding prior to that?
I know, I think the request is to help us in the planning process, identify places we could go for funding.
Okay.
Because clearly you all have access to things, looking at you, United Way, that I didn't know about. And so, so yeah, I think, and support for like, if theoretically or hypothetically, I mean, if we decide to ask for legislative funding, is it possible for this board to support that in whatever capacity you're able to, things like that. So it's not asking you to fund it, right, necessarily, but it's asking us to help with the plan for the funding and building out the infrastructure for the center if it's approved.
So if in fact we vote and this moves forward, my request would then be that I know that you guys, I know you and Crystal and everyone else have been working on things like this for a long time, maybe not this exact thing. If there is a request or a thought that we would be going as a board to the legislature for money for this session, that if you all could get that together sooner rather than later, given that we all definitely have our priorities set and voted on, I would imagine. And so that way we can navigate our systems to get the appropriate support to support those, whatever that request looks like from whomever's office that request is coming.
Yeah, I agree. I think we would need to prioritize that, but thank you for mentioning that.
I'll second Ellen's.
Thank you, Danette. There's a second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor to support the ABC APS staff team, along with community partners, including students, families with lived experience in moving forward with creating a plan, including funding for a family housing resource center pilot project. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, this is great. Thank you so much. And Deanna will be in touch if you're interested in being a part of this team that will be looking at it, or you have any people within your agencies that would be a good addition to it. She will be in touch with each of you to see if you recommend anybody that could be a part of the working group, and we will keep an eye on it. Okay. Thank you all so much. This is really exciting and a great partnership in how we can really help our community. Next, we have Dr. Salazar, who is here to talk about community school essentials key practices in action in alignment with our goals and guardrails.
Actually, I think he already, sorry, I think I made a mistake on the agenda. That's my fault. Kenny.
No more, Kenny?
I could put something on if you want. I got it already.
About it all
I think
day.
it's the same. I think it's the same presentation we did last time, right, Deanna?
Okay.
Yes.
He's like, but I'd love to take the mic if possible.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on next to board member and community announcements and requests. I believe we have announcement from the ABC staff in partnership with the city, the county, UNM School of Law, and New Mexico Legal Aid for the Housing Education Day. And I believe Kata is going to give us this announcement.
Yeah, we, as you can see on the slide, ABC staff, along with the city, county, UNM School of Law, New Mexico Legal Aid, we're conducting a Housing Education Day on Tuesday, February 18th. It's in the basement. It's in City Council chambers. So, yeah. Deanna, if you want to say more about that.
I just really want to thank the city for hosting us there. I know the city council chambers is going to be kind of a fun place to host this, but really we're talking about over 100 people will be participating in this. And as you mentioned, the School of Law and Legal Aid will be there. We'll be walking down to the courthouse to watch housing court so that we have some real experience with these folks on what families and students are experiencing when their housing is disrupted through eviction. And so we're really excited about this opportunity. And then in the afternoon, we'll be working very closely with Crystal and McKinney-Vento staff on building out that framework and and we're working with Dr. Salazar as well, in how the process will look. And we'll be gathering feedback at that time from the participants to inform our pilot project for the housing center. So we're really, really excited about this. If anybody happens to be downtown and it's not freezing cold that day and you want to join us, please let us know. We would love to have you there. So now it looks like you have a comment.
Yeah, if there's room for folks, if you could send something to me, I would be happy to ask the communications department to just send it out either as a, hey, this is going on, and if you are connected to this work, whatever that is, just so that I would also just like people to know that the city and the county, and the school district, all of these partners are coming together for things that aren't necessarily about building housing or about crisis, but about building a system that could eliminate the crisis in addition to everything else. And I would love if if city and APS could do something similar. I think it's important to lift up that the partnership and community schools are about solving our systems as well as the direct assistance.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I can't see if somebody else says. Kata, did you have an announcement about the youth job fair?
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent, for that. So we are also hosting our youth job fair on Saturday, February 1st at Bonifacio. As you can imagine, my department that includes all of the community centers, we hire in the summer almost 1,000 teenagers, mostly high schoolers, and we want to continue to do that. And this job fair is for them. And so we'd love our community schools support just to get the word out. But yeah, that'll be on February 1st.
Great, thank you. And if they haven't sent it to us yet, can they, if the team sends it to me, I can make sure we send it out to all of our parents on Peachjar too, so that everybody sees it. Just the PDF of it is fine.
I'll make sure you get that.
Thank you. And there is a question in the chat box from Counselor Rogers. If you can send the schedule for the Housing Education Day so that people can pop in.
Absolutely. I will share that with the entire board.
Great. Thank you. That would be great. The next announcement is on the alleyways project. Deanna.
So I'm not sure who the best person is here. Kata, Councilor Rogers, please feel free to jump in. I know the county also is working on this. This is another example of a really great partnership between the city, the county, the school district, and other community partners around the Safe Routes to School initiative at Wilson Middle School that we have brought to this board in the past. But they are working specifically in this case with the South San Pedro Neighborhood Association to beautify the alleyways for students as they walk to school in their walking school bus. And so there will be activities, painting, games, murals. And so they just asked us to share this with you all to, once again, you're all invited. We're hoping that this is a project that we can scale to other alleyways that might be of concern. And I know several other schools in this same area are talking about initiating their own walking school buses too. So just really exciting to see this project taking off and looking to replicate and scale it. And wanted to let you all know that there are several opportunities for you to participate if you would like to.
That's great. Thank you. Who is doing the murals?
The students.
Yeah, it's the student. Yes, go ahead.
It's really exciting. This is a great 2 projects that have kind of merged together in our district. And so the students have helped with the mural. I think even the picture that's shown, so the adults trace it out and then the students color it in. And so that's what they do during their field trips to the alley, is they get to actually help with all of the murals. This is an older picture. So the city and the county both bought mulch and all kinds of things for them to spread out the alley to make it. It's really cool. It's a really great project. And the South San Pedro Neighborhood Association is working on a playbook, a how-to guide that they can actually give on the alley project specifically to other neighborhoods. And so we have probably, I want to say 10 alleys happening right now in our district with this type of project, which is really exciting. And I have to say thank you to Barbara Peterson. She was involved in that at the beginning too, working, all of us got together in a meeting and really just fleshed out who can do what. Kata's department helped get them trained to be crossing guards and all the gear. So it's just been a really great, like, this is the power of when everybody pulls in the right directions in their lane, we can really make some things happen. And we're getting speed bumps too. I just approved the funding. I understand I'm new to this, right? But they've been fighting for speed bumps for that Wilson Whittier area since like Vicki Bannerman was the president, the principal there years ago. So I think this is exciting. So I just approved the funding for the speed bumps to slow people down in the school area there, and those will be going in any day now.
That's great. Thank you. Everybody forgets that middle schools don't get crossing guards or anybody watching for them. And so having those speed bumps in such a pedestrian friendly area is really helpful. So thank you. Any other announcements from board members or community announcements?
I have one. This is Counselor Rogers. I'm the co-chair of the Homeless Coordinating Council, and we just put out a call for folks who would like to join our subcommittees. We are really, that group has kind of been closed and really just been, elected officials and heads of like HSC. It's really the group that should be, in my opinion, identifying the gaps, figuring out who's supposed to fill those gaps. So we have just put out a huge call to start getting more folks involved in that, so that we can begin to look at gaps and start plugging those gaps. And so I'd love to share with that group, maybe if somebody from the ABC school boards wants to come talk about this housing navigation project, that would be a great place to get more resources from all of the big orgs, because all of the heads of all of our orgs, heads of the VA, heads of HSC, city councilors, county commissioners, all the advocacy groups for homelessness. So it's I think it would be a really great merge of those 2 projects to get some resources from that group. If y'all are open to coming and doing a presentation about it, I think that'd be a really great place to do that.
Great. So if you, Deanna, did you get that? I can't see anybody's face on here all of a sudden, so I can't see if anybody's still even on here. Okay.
Chelsea, if you could send the information,
Great.
We can do that.
Perfect. Great. So any other announcements? Okay. So with that, this was a great meeting and great discussions of seeing everything come together, and something that's so important to our students and our community. Our next meeting will be February 13th at 8:45, and we will meet on Zoom. So everybody have a warm, snowy day, and we will see you February 13th.